She was one of Hollywood's brightest stars. Loni Anderson wasn't just known for her beauty, but for the charm and energy she brought to every role. From her unforgettable time on WKRP in Cincinnati to her whirlwind romances that made endless headlines, Loni's life was anything but ordinary. Behind the glamour, she faced heartbreak, struggles, and a search for lasting happiness. Then came the shocking news just a month ago. Loni Anderson had passed away. But what left fans truly stunned was what her autopsy revealed. Join us as we uncover her story, from her early days to her final moments. Early life and education. Loni Anderson's story began in St. Paul, Minnesota, where she was born on August 5, 1945. Her father, Clayton Carl Andy Anderson, worked as an environmental chemist, while her mother, Maxine Hazel, had once been a model. Loni grew up in the suburb of Roseville, and even from an early age, her beauty and charm stood out. By her senior year in high school, she had already made an impression, being voted Queen of the Valentine's Day Winter Formal in 1963. In her autobiography, My Life in High Heels, Loni shared a personal story about how she got her name. Her father originally thought about naming her Leilani, but he quickly realized that as she grew older, people might tease her by twisting it into Leilani. To avoid that, he simply chose the name Loni. She also had a sister named Andrea, and together they were influenced by their family's colorful history. Loni's maternal grandmother, Hazel Callan, was not only a schoolteacher, but also managed a speakeasy-style dance hall during the Prohibition years. That mix of discipline and boldness seemed to run in the family, shaping Loni's own path. All of these pieces, her supportive parents, her grandmother's spirited example, and her own popularity at school, set the stage for a young woman who dreamed of something bigger. But how does a girl from a small Minnesota town find her way into Hollywood? Career beginnings and breakthrough. Loni's first step into acting came in 1966, when she landed a small role in the movie Nevada Smith, starring Steve McQueen. It was a start, but success did not come right away. In fact, she struggled for almost a decade, often finding herself without work. Then, in the mid-1970s, she finally started getting guest roles on television shows. She appeared in episodes of SWAT, the sitcom Phyllis, and the detective dramas Policewoman and Harry O. At one point, she even auditioned for the role of Chrissy on Three's Company. She didn't get the part, but she later showed up as Susan Walters in a Season 2 episode. That role wasn't life-changing, but it kept her name alive in Hollywood. The real turning point came in 1978. Producers saw a poster of her in a red swimsuit, an image that reminded them of Farrah Fawcett's famous 1976 poster. They thought she looked like Jane Mansfield, but carried the innocence of Marilyn Monroe. That combination made her unforgettable. It was enough to land her the role that would change her life forever. Jennifer Marlowe, the sultry yet charming receptionist on the sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati. Loni became the heart of the show. Audiences loved her, and critics took notice. For her role, she was nominated for 3 Golden Globe Awards and 2 Emmy Awards. Though the series often struggled with Nielsen ratings, it gained a loyal following among young viewers and radio disc jockeys. Her popularity soared, but it also gave her the confidence to ask for more. During the summer of 1980, she walked out, demanding a better salary. While waiting for negotiations, she starred in The Jane Mansfield Story. When the network finally agreed to her terms, she returned and stayed until the show ended in 1982. By then, she wasn't just a television actress, she was a household name. But fame is only one side of the story. The other side is what happened when her career collided with her personal life. Fame, films, and relationships. As Loni's television career took off, she also found herself in the spotlight for another reason: her personal life. She became widely known for her relationship with actor Bert Reynolds. Together, they starred in the comedy Stroker Ace in 1983. The movie was supposed to be a hit, but it turned into a critical and box office failure. Still, their relationship kept them in the headlines, with fans watching their every move. Loni also made appearances in other films, such as The Lonely Guy with Steve Martin, where she played herself, and she lent her voice to Flo, the collie, in the animated film All Dogs Go to Heaven in 1989. In television, she teamed up with Wonder Woman star Linda Carter in the series Partners in Crime in 1984, though the show didn't last long. A couple of years later, she starred in Easy Street from 1986 to 1987, another short-lived project. She also appeared in television adaptations of classic Hollywood films, including A Letter to Three Wives in 1985 and Sorry, Wrong Number in 1989. Neither brought her much attention. Then, in 1990, she starred in Coins in the Fountain, followed by a praised performance in White Hot, The Mysterious Murder of Thelma Todd in 1991. In that TV movie, she played the role of actress Thelma Todd, who had met a tragic end. Critics admired her work, proving that she had depth beyond glamorous roles. During this time, Loni and Bert Reynolds tried to work together again. The plan was for her to co-star with him in his sitcom Evening Shade, but the network wasn't convinced and replaced her with Marilu Henner. Soon after, another opportunity slipped away, when producers of Designing Women considered her as a replacement for Delta Burke, but pulled back because of her salary demands. Still, Loni found her way back into familiar territory. She returned briefly as Jennifer Marlowe in the new WKRP in Cincinnati, and later joined the final season of the sitcom Nurses in 1993, playing hospital administrator Casey McAfee. She didn't stop there. She kept showing up in popular shows like Clueless, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and Melrose Place. On the big screen, she appeared in movies such as Three Ninjas, High Noon at Mega Mountain, and A Night at the Roxbury in 1998. Each role added another layer to her career. Yet by the mid-1990s, it wasn't just her acting that got attention. It was her voice off-screen. Later Years and Advocacy. In 1995, Loni released her autobiography, My Life in High Heels. In it, she shared not just her journey in Hollywood, but also her personal reflections. She wrote about growing up with parents who both smoked, and how that experience shaped her awareness of lung disease. Seeing the effects of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, up close, she knew how serious it was. In 1999, she became a spokesperson for a COPD support group called COPD Together. It showed another side of her, an actress using her platform to bring attention to health issues. As the years passed, her acting became less frequent, but she never disappeared. In April 2018, she appeared promoting WKRP in Cincinnati and other shows on the MeTV network, reminding fans of the golden years of television. She also took on new projects, proving she wasn't done yet. From 2016 to 2020, she starred in the web series My Sister Is So Gay, showing that she could adapt to new formats and audiences. Then, in October 2023, she was part of Ladies of the 80s, A Diva's Christmas, a Lifetime film that reunited 5 iconic soap opera actresses. Alongside Linda Gray, Morgan Fairchild, Donna Mills, and Nicolette Sheridan, Loni stepped back into the spotlight one more time. According to the film's description, the actresses played divas coming together for a reunion show while also helping 2 people find love during Christmas. It was lighthearted, nostalgic, and filled with the spirit of her era. Even in her later years, she continued to bring entertainment and joy to audiences. Speaking of which, Loni Anderson will always be remembered for her role as Jennifer Marlowe in the hit TV sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati. Jennifer Marlowe, and WKRP in Cincinnati. The series followed a struggling radio station in Ohio and the quirky mix of people working there. Among the cast were Gary Sandy, Tim Reed, Howard Hesseman, Frank Bonner, Gordon Jump, and Jan Smithers. But it was Anderson's Jennifer Marlowe who stole the spotlight. On the show, Jennifer was the receptionist, always dressed in high heels and with her famous blonde hair and bright smile. She wasn't just glamorous, she was smart, confident, and witty. She knew how to handle unwanted calls and smooth over problems, keeping the station afloat when everyone else seemed to fall apart. Fans loved her, and critics praised her performance. Playing Jennifer Marlowe earned Loni 2 Emmy Award nominations and 3 Golden Globe nominations. It was the role that turned her into a household name, making her one of the most recognized faces on television at the time. But even though her career defined her in the public eye, her personal life was equally full of stories, surprises, and sometimes heartbreak. A life of marriages and family. Loni Anderson's personal life was just as eventful as her time on screen. She was married 4 times, and each relationship told its own story. Her first marriage was to Bruce Hasselberg in 1964. The union was short, and they divorced 2 years later in 1966. She later married actor Ross Bickle in 1974. Bickle was known for roles in films like Airport 77 and Major Payne. Their marriage lasted 7 years before ending in 1981. Her third marriage was the one that grabbed the most attention, her relationship with Bert Reynolds. The two met in 1981, began dating in 1982, and by 1988 they were married. They later divorced in 1993 after years of ups and downs. After that, she spent time in a long relationship with Jeffrey Brown, but the two never tied the knot. Along the way, Anderson also became a mother. She had 2 children, including her adopted son, Quentin, whom she shared with Reynolds. Family life was very important to her, but it often unfolded under the shadow of her celebrity relationships. By this point, the world was not just watching her career. They were also closely watching her private life. And when she joined forces with Bert Reynolds, Hollywood couldn't look away. The Hollywood marriage everyone watched. When Loni Anderson and Bert Reynolds got together, they became one of Hollywood's most glamorous couples. Their relationship began in 1982, soon after they first met, and 6 years later they married in a secret ceremony at Reynolds Ranch in Jupiter, Florida. Only 65 guests attended, but it was a star-studded event. Perry Como was there, and singer Robbie Benson remembered, "It couldn't have been lovelier." They looked like the perfect couple, the kind you see on the top of a wedding cake, only bigger. Reynolds himself said at the reception, "I'm a very lucky man. I married my best friend today." Anderson described feeling like Cinderella, calling Reynolds her Prince Charming. To the outside world, they looked like the picture of happiness. But behind the fairy tale, cracks were already beginning to form. Reynolds later admitted, "Marrying her at all was something I categorized as a really dumb move on my part. I should have known that you don't marry an actress." His doubts echoed what his mother had warned him before the wedding. He recalled walking down the aisle and seeing his mother shaking her head. No, he ignored it. But years later, Reynolds admitted, "My mom was always right." Anderson, for her part, once said she was hesitant about him too because of all those tabloid headlines. But when she got to know him, she explained in 1989, "He's so different. He's a quiet, introspective man with very deep emotions." Their marriage had begun with such hope, but it didn't take long before problems took over their relationship. The breakdown of a marriage. The marriage between Bert Reynolds and Loni Anderson quickly turned turbulent. In 1989, they adopted a son, Quentin, who became Reynolds' only child. Both of them adored him. Reynolds once said, "I never knew I could fall in love with anyone the way I have fallen in love with Quentin." Anderson felt the same, admitting, "I fall in love with you all over again when I see you with Quentin." But even with a child in their lives, the relationship grew toxic. Reynolds claimed in his memoir, "But Enough About Me," that Anderson's spending was out of control. He said she once maxed out a $45,000 platinum credit card in just 30 minutes, buying dresses, jewelry, china, and linens. Anderson had told him, "I never wear a dress after it has been photographed. I have to dress like a star." At the same time, Anderson pointed her finger back at Reynolds. In the 2023 documentary, I Am Bert Reynolds, she described his reckless spending habits, saying, if he made $100, he spent $100. His failed restaurant investment cost him $13 million, a loss so great he had to sign over his film and TV residuals to cover it. To the public, they looked glamorous, but in private, their marriage was filled with infidelity, drug use, arguments over money, and bitter fights. Reynolds himself admitted in later interviews that it wasn't lollipops and roses. He told People magazine in 2015 that the hardest lesson he ever learned was that the person you fall in love with can be the worst person to spend the rest of your life with. After 11 years together, 5 of them married. The couple divorced in 1993. It was messy, painful, and played out under the eyes of the press. Anderson and Reynolds never found peace in their relationship, but their story became one of Hollywood's most memorable love and loss sagas. The sudden end of a Hollywood marriage. The divorce between Loni Anderson and Bert Reynolds shocked fans everywhere. For Anderson, it felt like it came out of nowhere. She later said that just before filming the show, Nurses in 1993, she had spent a weekend with Reynolds and their son Quentin. Only hours after he had told her, "You know I love you forever," she was handed divorce papers. Anderson told Good Housekeeping there were no signs of discontent or discussion of divorce or separation. "I had no inkling there was a problem in our marriage." Reynolds' side told a different story. His representative released a statement saying the marriage was irretrievably broken. According to them, Reynolds still had the highest respect and regard for Miss Anderson, but he believed their priorities were no longer the same. Then came accusations that made headlines for years. Reynolds claimed Anderson had been unfaithful, something she denied. He told Good Morning America that he had been so unhappy with Anderson and had caught her cheating on me. He said that was why he called off the marriage and admitted that her alleged betrayal led to his own infidelity. Reynolds even confessed to a 2-year affair with a cocktail lounge manager named Pam Seals. Anderson firmly denied the claims, insisting, "I have never looked at another man." The arguments did not stop there. In 1989, Reynolds himself had admitted, "Loni could have left me 1,000,000 times, and she would have been smart to leave." Those words seemed to foreshadow what was coming. After the divorce, the bitterness grew worse. Anderson later accused Reynolds of abuse during their marriage, something she said was tied to his drug use. In an interview with SF Gate, she described a terrifying moment only a month before their split. "Bert shoved me all around the room, then threw me to the floor and opened the drawer and got out a loaded gun. He handed me the gun and told me to shoot myself and do us all a favor." She said she was terrified and remembered Reynolds telling her no one would believe her because he was Mr. Wonderful and the world loved him. Reynolds refused to comment directly on those claims. His rep said he wished Anderson nothing but the very best. Still, in later years, Reynolds admitted regret about the marriage. He told People magazine in 2015, "Marrying Anderson was a really dumb move on my part. Their marriage ended in pain and scandal, but it became one of Hollywood's most unforgettable breakups." And while this chapter of her life was dark, Anderson eventually found a new love story that lasted far longer. A new chapter with Bob Flick. After the stormy years with Reynolds, Anderson found stability in Bob Flick. Flick was a musician, one of the founding members of the folk group The Brothers Four. The band rose to fame in the 1960s with their song Greenfields, which reached #2 on the pop charts. Flick remained active for decades, performing and creating music for television and film. Anderson and Flick's story had a unique twist. They first met many years earlier at a movie premiere in Minneapolis. At that time, Anderson was chosen by a local newspaper as a lucky young fan to pose for a picture with the brothers four. Life went on, and it wasn't until years later that their paths crossed again. This time, their meeting turned into something deeper. In 2008, Anderson and Flick exchanged vows in an intimate ceremony surrounded by friends and family. Unlike her past high-profile relationships, this one was private and steady. Flick was different from her Hollywood husbands. He lived in the world of music, not acting, and their partnership did not draw the same tabloid attention. Their marriage lasted more than 15 years, a sharp contrast to the short-lived unions she had before. Flick was by her side through her later years, supporting her as she stepped back from acting. For fans, it was a relief to see Anderson in a stable and lasting relationship. It showed that after years of heartbreak and public drama, she had found someone who gave her peace. But Anderson's personal life was not only about marriages. She was also a mother, and her children played a central role in her story. Motherhood and family legacy. Loni Anderson's family life was filled with both joy and challenges. She was a mother of 2 children. Her daughter, Deidre, was from her first marriage to Bruce Hasselberg. Later, with Bert Reynolds, she adopted a son named Quentin in 1989. Anderson often spoke about how much she loved being a mother. For Reynolds, too, Quentin became the center of his world. He once said, "I never knew I could fall in love with anyone the way I have fallen in love with Quentin." Anderson echoed the sentiment, saying she fell in love with Reynolds all over again when she saw him with their son. But even with a child in their home, their marriage could not survive. After their divorce, Anderson continued raising Quentin while maintaining a close relationship with her daughter, Deidre. Years later, when Anderson married Bob Flick in 2008, Quentin played a special role. He walked his mother down the aisle, a touching moment that symbolized the bond they shared. By then, Quentin was an adult, and the gesture showed how important family was to Anderson. Beyond her 2 children, she also became a grandmother. She had grandchildren named Megan and Mackenzie, as well as step-grandchildren Felix and Maximilian through her extended family. She also welcomed a stepson, Adam, into her circle when she married Flick. Her family grew over the years, and she cherished those relationships as much as her Hollywood career. The explosive memoir. Back in 1995, Loni Anderson shook the world with her autobiography, My Life in High Heels. Written with Larkin Warren, the book was anything but ordinary. It was filled with raw stories of love, betrayal, and heartbreak. Anderson spoke openly about her relationship with Bert Reynolds, a romance that had once looked like a fairy tale but soon turned into something darker. She recalled how Reynolds called her Countess, while she called him Buddy Lee. Their early moments together were romantic, even playful. She remembered one night when they danced naked on his Florida balcony before making love. In her words, he was sweet, tentative, and gentle, with a body like a great god. But that dream faded. Years later, in the same Florida home, she tried to spark intimacy again by wearing what she called trashy lingerie. Reynolds snapped at her, asking, "What the hell do you think I am? A stud service?" That bitter remark captured how far their marriage had fallen. Readers were stunned by the book's honesty. Anderson described Reynolds as a pill popper who also abused her. She wrote about a frightening moment in 1993 when he shoved me around, pushing me onto the floor. Then he pulled out a gun and said, "Here, why don't you kill yourself and do us all a favor?" She said he twisted her wrist until it bled, sent her a 16-page threatening letter, and even brought his mistress to tapings of Evening Shade. For fans, these claims were shocking, especially since Reynolds had always been seen as Mr. Wonderful. But Anderson was not only exposing her pain, she was also telling her story of survival. And long before Reynolds, her life had already been full of dramatic turns. In her book, Anderson revealed how chaos seemed to follow her from a young age. She described her childhood as idyllic, but by 18 she was already making bold choices. She eloped at a young age, marrying Bruce Hasselberg. That first marriage was a disaster. She described her wedding night as one of the great disasters in the history of sex on this planet. According to her, they never had proper intercourse because it was too painful. Yet somehow, she became pregnant. Hasselberg couldn't believe it. "This can't be my baby," she remembered him yelling. "We never did it." Despite his disbelief, their daughter Deidre was born, and Anderson was left to raise her mostly on her own. Acting soon followed. Anderson found her way into television and film, but she also fell into a pattern of passionate affairs. One of the most memorable was with her WKRP in Cincinnati co-star, Gary Sandy. She described it in her autobiography as explosive, saying, "It was like experiencing a nuclear explosion in a very small place. I was sexually addicted to him." Anderson admitted that her addictions and impulses often pulled her into trouble, but she also showed that she had a way of landing on her feet. Each failed relationship was followed by another chapter in her life, and eventually another man. By the time her marriage with Reynolds collapsed, she was already finding someone new to lean on. But life was far from done testing her strength. In her final years, surrounded by children and grandchildren, Anderson's life was far quieter than the chaos of her earlier marriages. Her legacy was not only her iconic role on television, but also the family she built, and the strength she carried through public and private storms. The final illness and cause of death. In August 2025, fans were devastated to learn that Loni Anderson had died just days before her 80th birthday. At first, her family only shared that she had suffered from a prolonged illness, but nearly 3 weeks later, her official cause of death was revealed. According to her death certificate, Anderson died of metastatic uterine leiomyosarcoma, a rare and aggressive cancer that begins in the uterus and can spread to the lungs and liver. Her remains were cremated and buried in Hollywood on August 7th. Her longtime publicist, Cheryl J. Kagan, confirmed the news, and her family released a statement saying, "We are heartbroken to announce the passing of our dear wife, mother, and grandmother." The exact details of Anderson's diagnosis or treatment were never shared. What fans do know is that she fought the illness quietly and bravely. Her passing left many shocked, especially since she had appeared in projects as recently as 2023, when she co-starred in Ladies of the 80s, A Diva's Christmas, alongside Linda Gray, Morgan Fairchild, Donna Mills, and Nicolette Sheridan. Morgan Fairchild paid tribute to her friend on social media, writing, "I am heartbroken to hear of the passing of the wonderful Loni Anderson, the sweetest, most gracious lady. I'm just devastated to hear this." Anderson's death reminded the world of how quickly life can change. Just 2 days later, she would have turned 80, but while her health struggles ended her life, her family and legacy carried her name forward. When Anderson died on August 3, 2025, she left behind a family that loved her deeply. Flick stood by her side for over 15 years, supporting her through both work and illness. Anderson was also a mother of 2. Her daughter Deidre was from her first marriage, and her son Quentin was adopted with Bert Reynolds in 1989. In fact, Quentin walked his mother down the aisle when she married Flick, a touching gesture that showed their strong bond. She also had 2 grandchildren, Megan and Mackenzie, who brought joy to her later years. Through Flick, she also had a stepson, Adam, and 2 step-grandchildren, Felix and Maximilian. Her family, including children and grandchildren, described her as a loving wife, mother, and grandmother. They announced after her death that a private service would be held at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, a resting place for many stars of her generation. Even in her last years, Anderson stayed active. Her role in Ladies of the 80s brought her back to the screen, reminding audiences of the glamour and charm she carried from her early career. But her family's words in their statement showed what truly mattered. "We are heartbroken," they said, mourning not just the actress, but the woman they knew in private. And while fans will always remember her as Jennifer Marlowe from WKRP in Cincinnati, her children and grandchildren will remember her as the heart of their family. Do you believe she finally found lasting happiness with Bob Flick, or was her greatest love story earlier in her life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.